And you may begin.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. I want to welcome you all to the Undeniable Impact of the Arts, a conversation with creative educators and entrepreneurs. This is the panel discussion about economic growth, wealth from a Black artist perspective. I am Dr. Vanessa Lorraine Jackson, coordinated the dance program at Coppin State University, the #1 HBCU dance program. Welcome to Coppin State University Black History Month celebration, African Americans in the Arts, sponsored by the African American Committee in collaboration with the dance program. I invite our audience at this point to introduce themselves in the chat, to tell us where you're from, or maybe just to tell us what you think an artist needs to be successful. So we'll take about 2 minutes. Please introduce yourself, everyone, say hello, and then tell us a little bit about what you think an artist needs to be successful and where you're from. Thank you.
Someone having some technical difficulties. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm writing in now, but I don't see any other chats.
Okay. Nice.
And panelists, you can also join in. You can tell us what you think. So feel free to chime in as well. So I do believe in interactive learning. I should say that. So that's why we've opened up the chat to make it a little more interactive. And Vanessa just put in the chat that she thinks ambition is one of those things that artists need. And welcome, Karen. How are you? Talking about culture and social change, really talking about how they feel. These are some great conversations. Okay, well, continue to write in the chat. So before we begin, I would like to share just some insight into the flow of our panel discussion. At the beginning of our conversation, each of the panelists will introduce themselves and share with you why economic development and wealth is so important at this time. As moderator, I will ask questions centered around the starving artist syndrome and also how we can begin to understand our value as artists and how artists can begin visualizing and manifesting the dream of becoming a successful artist. At the end of the conversation, we will open up our virtual stage for questions from the audience. Please raise your hand to be acknowledged by our team. So I want to welcome again Antoinette Coward Gilmore, Dr. C. Kamal Nance, and Bashir and Christopher Page Sanders. Would you each just take a moment to introduce yourself in the order in which I just announced?
Welcome, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Jackson, for having me in this panel discussion and back at Coppin State. Greetings, everyone. I am Antoinette Coward Gilmore. I am the founder, CEO, and artistic director of Dance for Nia Phoenix Dance. And for all of us who are connected with Kwanzaa or know the meaning of the word Nia, Nia means purpose. So the translation of my organization's name is Dance for Purpose. I am also a second year doctoral student at Texas Women's University, seeking my PhD in dance research and philosophy. And for all of you out there in the Greek world, I am a Silver Star 25 member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So I'm very, very proud of that. And I am ecstatic to be on a panel with such wonderful artists and conductors of change. So I'm excited for this conversation. So thank you, Dr. Jackson.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm assuming people can hear me, yes? Okay. I'm Dr. Kamal Nance. I'm an associate professor in dance and African American studies at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, where I'm also a Dean's Fellow in the College of Fine and Applied Arts. I am the senior master teacher of the Mafundala African Dance Technique. And like my soror, Antoinette, I'm a member of the oldest and coldest Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And glad to be in this space and what I'm perceiving to be a Black space to share about achievement and excellence among Black artists. So thank you for the invitation, Dr. Jackson, and thank you all for having me.
Hello, I'm Bashir. Can you all hear me? Okay, perfect. I'm Bashir Page Sanders. I am the co-founding artistic director of New York Contemporary Dance Theater, along with Christopher Page Sanders, originally from Baltimore, Maryland. Currently live in New York, but New World was actually founded in Denver. We started in Denver some years ago after dancing with Cleveland Park Robinson Dance Ensemble. Currently a full-time teacher with the National Dance Institute, and then also work for a program in New York called Rosie's Theater Kids, where we do a lot of outreach program and working to enrich kids in the arts, in dance, music, theater, drama. But we're so excited to be here. Sorry if our internet is a little spotty. We're currently in Denver. Christopher's doing some work, so we're currently here in the Airbnb, and the connection is a little spotty. So we're so excited to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christopher Page Sanders. I am the co-artistic director of New World Contemporary Dance Theater. I'm also a director and choreographer for theater, as well as a choreographer for dance and other concert dance avenues. That's a little bit about myself. Thank you so much for the invitation. We are very excited to be here.
Great, thank you, everyone. So let me begin our conversation by setting the stage. Success is measurable. That's number one. We can measure success. There are external benchmarks and outcomes. There are indicators for success. So, come on. When I first met you at Temple, we were sitting in the dance studio waiting to audition for the enter into the program. I think it was the MFA program, but the doctoral program. And I was sitting there with you because you were the only other person of color. So we sat together in the space and we started talking. But the one thing I noticed about you almost immediately, as a seasoned choreographer, performer, et cetera, that you had this passion to be successful. It was written all over you. I could see it in your eyes. I could see it in the way you walked. I mean, you had no real understanding of technique outside of the African dance space, and you performed through that stage like you had been dancing for years, okay? In that space is what I mean. So can you tell us a little bit, when did you know, what were the indicators, first indicator or benchmark where you knew you were going to be successful and there was no doubt in your mind that you would be successful? Can you share a personal story with us, please?
Yeah, I think when you asked the question before this talk, I was like, what moment did happen? What was it? What was it? And because I fashioned myself being a dance performer, a choreographer, a scholar, there are different ways. There are multiple ways in which benchmark success revealed themselves to me. As a performer, one of the things I remember most is I was dancing as a guest artist for the Chuck Davis, may he rest in peace, the Chuck Davis's African American Dance Ensemble. And the review came out about that concert, and it said, Kamal Nance, what did they say? Kamal Nance from the Barry and Nance Dance Project was spectacular. Those were the words. I was like, wow, so not that I measure my success particularly on, what other people think, but it was a benchmark where my lived experience, what I was feeling, kind of matched what people were seeing. And then going on, I think I knew success when I would go to different spaces, both academic and performance-wise, where people would know who I was before I went into the room. Yeah, so I think that was a benchmark success. I think you're downplaying your role, Dr. Jackson. Okay, in terms of our interaction. Let me just set the record straight. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I had just I was 22 years old. I had only started dancing 3 years before. Only thing I knew was, a little bit of modern I had and Mafundala. And Dr. Vanessa Lorraine Jackson pulled me aside and said, would you like to warm up with me? And took me through a Graham S warm up that got me to loosen my nerves, and then I just went for it. So I thank you now, because I try to be that for other people that I see too as well. So.
Oh, thank you, Kamal. Thank you so much. I love you. Christopher, I have not seen you perform, but I've seen pictures of you on your website, and I can almost immediately tell when someone has really great technique, someone who has embedded themselves into the performing arts. I mean, you can see it almost automatically. I mean, they don't even have to say anything. It's the way that a person, like Kamal said, would walk into the studio or on the stage, or how they hold their arms, etc. Can you tell us what was the moment when you knew that your pathway as a performing artist and choreographer was kind of rooted, that you knew this is what you wanted to do and you were going to do it no matter what, no matter the obstacles, you were going to be successful at this?
Yeah, I was in high school. And I went to, it wasn't a performing arts high school, but it was a high school that used performing arts and creativity in our educational setting very heavily. And within that structure, there was nothing being done about the Black experience, about the African American experience. And for me, I just had this kind of crazy thought that I would change that and that I would produce something for the entire high school and middle school that spoke to the Black experience. And I gathered all of my friends, and they all immediately said yes. And I just started gathering things that I liked, songs that were on the radio, poetry from Langston Hughes, and we created this hour-long review of of music, of experience, and it was a curated thing, and we created an experience from the moment that people entered the theater to the moment that they walked out. And although it wasn't something that I sat down and I was like, "Ooh, how am I going to do this?" It just kind of flowed out of me, and it flowed out of me naturally. And it was in that moment that I knew, oh, this is what I really want to do. I love performing, but I also love curating experiences and curating places and spaces for people to enter into, whether that be the Black experience, whether that be a dance experience, whether that be whatever that is, coming to my home to eat food, because I also love to cook. But that, I think that's the moment that I knew, oh, this is something special. And I know that I could enrich and touch folks' lives through these experiences that were created.
Thank you. That's lovely. So, Antoinette, you and I go way back too. I think you were one of the first people I brought to Coppin as an adjunct to help me build the program. So I thank you. And what you should know is Antoinette came all the way down on Tuesdays and Thursdays from Philadelphia. She drove or took the train, and she did that for about 3 years before she decided it was time for her to start her own business. So I want to ask you a question. Okay, so how would you define success as an artist, educator, and entrepreneur? You're muted.
And I just knew I was going to be prepared. I think
Okay.
everything everybody just said, creating space, creating our space, having the agency to do it in the way that suits us, standing on history and legacy. Because right here, just in this conversation, I'm from Philly, and my company is Philly based, but as a Philadelphia artist, I was able to be trained by the Real Freedom Theater. That's what I call it, based on the history that's going on now. And that connects me to John Allen, Robert Leslie, Patricia Scott Hobbs, which actually opened the door for Mama Kariamu to base some Fundala at Freedom. So at a very early age, I was on that train of something that was developing just expansively. And Kamal is now that next step after Mama. My other dance mom, Faye Snow, Horton Master, which led me to all other Horton Avenues. And I'm a graduate of the University of Arts. I think Bashir and I are alumnus. I feel like when I was dancing in New York with Forces, Abdel Salam and Diane Harvey, I would come back from New York, take class with Faye. I think I saw Bashir around campus. And, I stand with my uncle, Wayne St. David, we've just been touched, and being able to walk through the doors of Philadelphia and Miss Brown, creating space for the Philadelphia dancer to be with Mr. Truitt and Milton Myers and Denise Jefferson and all of those greats. Kevin Jeff is like my heart. To be able to be in history. I am a real big history and lineage person, and I stand on ceremony that you must honor the people who gave you these wings. And if those of us who know the names that I just said, and if you trace the lineage, all of those people created space and opportunity so that we can have this conversation today. So even if you think about, Miss Brown bringing those people from Philly, or Faye bringing, people from Philly, and who Faye trained. So you're looking at Gary DeLoach, you're looking at Robert Garland. Robert Garland's the artist director of Dance Theater of Harlem now. You're looking at Abdul Rahim Jackson, Ailey, Anthony Burrell, Ailey, Beyonce, and Mariah Carey. Teresa Howard, she's doing her whole lineage with ballet. Christine Copman Pierangeli, my mentor, she's now at Coppin State. Dance Theater of Harlem. Like, Lord have mercy, I can rattle. We would be here all day of how I can rattle the different connections, even with, our wonderful artists on the panel. You're talking about Cleo Parker Robinson. Right there is connected with IABD. IABD connects to everybody. And, I'm fortunate enough through Miss Brown for my company to be a part of the IABD lineage and the COHI granting, source. And so the success comes from, okay, you're starting to build your work, right? And people start to take notice, and you get your accolades in the newspaper, or you get audience members that send you comments to say how much the performance touched you. And then, you want to keep going. And then you get some dancer comments. Oh, thank you so much for taking me on tour. That was the first time I ever been on an airplane. You're like, what? What do you mean it's the first time you've been on an airplane? But you're giving people space, opportunity, exposure. When you get to watch your babies, if you have someone in your training program from 3 and you look at them at 17. I just sent one of my babies to my girlfriend Chucky, who danced with Forces. I'm sorry, Cheryl Pollard Thomas, and she works with Earl Mosley at their summer intensive. And so watch someone whose foot I had to correct in passe now have the opportunity. They worked with Rennie, they worked with Meredith Rainey, they did a Paul Taylor piece, like all of these wonderful people. And then thinking back to my lineage, UArts gave us the opportunity to connect with Ruth Adrian and be our modern teacher, and have Pat Thomas, and have all these wonderful people. So I can go on and on, but success is creating space. Success is experience. Even if you hop out into the Greek world, I am so honored to say Mama Pearl Primus and Carmen de Lavalade and Lauren Anderson are all AKAs. And just as, Judith Jameson is a Delta and Angela Bassett is Delta, like we can stretch far and wide into our lineage to find out how we're all connected in time and space. And you always have to pay tribute to Mama Catherine Dunham, because her and everybody else, we're on that activist side. We're on that social justice side. We're using our art to make change. And that's what Dance for Me is about, using the art to make change and creating space for people to want to use their voice in that way. Nothing wrong with commercial art too. Nothing wrong for art's sake. But for our people, we have to use our tools to push us forward. And that's what I've been mandated by my training, but I also have a very deep purpose, Nia, to make sure I continue to push that needle forward. So
Thank you so much. So Bashir, last but not least, but I left you last because you're from Baltimore. And I also taught you. I had the pleasure and honor of teaching you. But I want to talk, we're still going to talk about success, but I'm wondering, did you have to detour anytime along your pathway to get to become successful? Were there detours that, you started on this road, but you found that this didn't work, and then you had to shift over here, and you had to shift over here, but you were willing, you had that spirit to shift and keep moving forward. Can you share a story?
Oh yeah. No, there was a lot of shifts and transitions. Some that was, I would say, unnecessary. And when I say unnecessary, meaning, I think it's all necessary, but things that could have been prevented. But when you're growing and you're young and you're experimenting and you're trying to figure things out, so sometimes there were detours that didn't necessarily have to be detours, but definitely, definitely in college, just trying to figure out life and figure out the right place to be. I think those were the biggest detours and realms. Just on a side note, in addition to having you, Miss Vanessa, I also had Antoinette. I don't know if you remember, but you came in during the transition of because I had Miss Faith Snow, and you came in and taught for her during a period. So, I got that connection as well, in addition to just us being a part of UArts. But nonetheless, yes, there's definitely been detours, and I think more so discoveries. I think life has always brought me back to where I was supposed to be. And I think about the initial thought and dream of being a performing artist, and I'm gonna dance until I can't dance anymore. And I think being a part of Cleo Parker Robinson, it kind of transitioned me into being really wanting to be a teacher. I've always wanted to be a teacher, and I remember working with you at Essex. I was taking dance classes, and I was like, "Oh, I'll be a dance minor," and you were like, "Oh no, you're a dance major." But I was thinking "Oh, I'm gonna do education. I'm gonna be a teacher. I'm gonna teach elementary school," and that wasn't the initial path of my life. The initial path was being a performing artist and all of that, and that was great. But then it brought me back to still teaching. And I find, as you were talking about success, I find so much joy and success in that, in training these young artists and watching them go off to really be successful and to really do some incredible things, and to know that I was a part of that. Sometimes I think should I perform more? Should I have done this? Should I have been on this type of path? But I feel like there has been some detours, but it's always landed me where I was supposed to be. So
Okay, well,
after that.
thank you each for sharing your personal story. Let's move on to this whole notion about starving artists, okay? And I just want to bring to the table a article I read by Lisa Phillips. It was in the Americans for the Arts publication. And she said there is a big disconnect between the desire for artists to become successful and earning a living with their art form and how they think about their craft as a business. She also says that artists have a high level of competency producing their craft, but lack accountability for marketing themselves, booking jobs, handling finances, creating PR, searching for new opportunities. Basically, to sum it up, much of the artist's business side of their career is non existent. So I'm going to ask Antoinette, then Christopher, Kamal, then Bashir to really address this whole idea about a starving artist and how do we change the mindset of the next generation so that they're building work well through their art form. So Antoinette, Christopher, Kamal, and Bashir, you have
A
the floor.
topic, yeah, a topic very dear to my heart because I'm very agitated that our country or Western society does not have the respect for performing arts, particularly dance, the way they have for other occupations. I remember very young, I had one of my acting instructors say, "What are you going to do when you get older?" I said, "Well, be dancer." They said, "No, seriously, what are you going to do?" And that enrages me when I hear comments like that. It enrages me to see that we will promote our youth, particularly our young women, to take dance up until age 18. And then it's like, okay, what are you really going to go to college for? I wrote my master's thesis at NYU on dance being an undervalued occupation in contemporary Western society. So you really have to look at the root of how this country was created, to look at the artists, particularly look at the root of how we look at the moving body and that dualism between mind body that on one hand from those Puritan kind of principles were very uplifted, very stiff, very stuff. We don't want to see the body move, but yet behind the walls of the speakeasy, we want to get gut bucket down and dirty because we enjoy it, because we love to see the body moving that way. But in our very conservative side, we don't want to deal with that in real time. So we've done the studies, we've done all of the testing and put it into the writings that the arts changes lives, the arts makes an impact, the arts put our youth into a very specific trajectory of being positive. I think you just had me write an article or help co-write an article with you about how the arts change lives for the kids in Philadelphia. And I actually found a very wonderful interview that Anthony Burrell did. And for all of you who know Anthony personally, he's from South Philly. And those of you from Philly, we know South Philly can be a little here and there, a little sketchy. But because of Point Breeze, because of Wayne St. David, because of Face Note, because of this art of dance, Joan Myers Brown, they put him on a trajectory for success. You didn't have to you cut off that vessel of the street. When you give children something positive to do and something that affirms their identity, then they don't need to go to the street to figure out, where do I get the love or the attention or the affirmation. Okay. So I don't know if people of my generation at UArts can remember, but as a junior, senior, when you had to pick your major or go to your seminar or start to create your composition to graduate, I knocked on Susan's door tremendously and was like, "Can I get a grant writing class? Can I get a budget class? Can I get the tools I will need to build a business?" Because they will affirm us and build us technically, artistry, audition wise. How do you make back then we had composites and resumes where we had to have hard copy pictures. Now you can create a reel and just send a link. But they were good for that and how to prep us to be an artist. But an artist has to learn the business. And one thing Miss Brown said to me in a meeting, and also we honored her at one of our galas, it's nice that everyone comes and supports Antoinette, the vision, but you have to support the business. And the business is, number one, find board members who want to push the vision forward and be ambassadors for the organization. Two, everybody has a fiduciary responsibility and we have to know what we're getting into financially. Three, lights don't come on by themselves. So if you're having a training program or if you're writing contracts or you're entered into a contract, we all know money is funny and money gets wherever. But if I have a due date of you to pay me so that I can pay my landlord, we all have to honor these financial commitments. Dancers, if you sign a contract with a company, honor your word. You know, dancers like to skip and jump and they're always looking for their best opportunity, but sometimes they cut their nose to spite their face. So it's all about everyone's artistic or just work ethic and morals. But two, even though you're a great artist, you got to learn how to read a budget sheet. You got to learn how to, I think Maryland may have this too, but we have the data project that Pennsylvania, in order to get a grant, you have to fill this benchmarking form so that you understand where your revenue is coming, where your expenses are coming from, the full-time, part-time equity to your workers to kind of calculate that, how many hits you get on social media, how much are you paying for marketing. Like, it's a lot of the business aspect. So I employ every artist. If you can't go take a business class, intern someplace, and not just on the artist side, get in the back room of the arts administration and find out, Canva is fabulous, play with Canva, or get with somebody to start, playing with your different looks and your branding and all that wonderful stuff, because you have to do it. So unfortunately, do I want to be on the dance floor and twirl and get all the accolades? And yes, that's where my heart is. But to create space so that other people can have that opportunity, I now have to shift to the back room, look at the budget sheets, count the tickets, make sure my costume people are in place, all of those things that we as directors and business owners know you have to do. Did you pay your taxes? Did you do your taxes already? Like, all of those things are so important. So
So I
you got
just
to
want to
get on the
say this.
business.
I want to say this to the audience. So Antoinette is working on her PhD. So the way in which she is responding by qualifying everything that she does is what she needs to do in order to complete her doctorate. So she's in that mode, and you just have to experience this is what, doing your doctorate, qualifying everybody, everything that you do, etc. So Christopher, so thank you. We recognize it. We understand, and we've been there. Christopher, could you also then Kamal and then Bashir, the
Um,
starving artist?
yeah, absolutely. And I think that everything that Antoinette just said is absolutely it. That is absolutely key. Um, what I've also found in my experience of trying to battle what we feel the starving artist should be is that it doesn't have to be that way. I being a starving artist was not necessarily not my experience at all. I was really, really fortunate to get a job right out of college with Cleo Park Robinson Dance Ensemble. And then even during college, I was really fortunate to work with other dance companies in the Kansas City area and work with the Kansas City Friends of Alvin Ailey, just because I was an educator and I was a teacher. But it was really interesting that even in the midst of all of that, it's very much like imposter syndrome. I felt like, oh my God, I should be a starving artist. I should be out here just trying to work and figure out where or how the bills are getting paid, because that's what we're taught and that's what we're fed. We're fed that when you decide to become an artist, that you will have to you'll be able to work, you'll be able to create, but you'll have to figure out how to do these side jobs and how to do these side hustles. And that's where the starving artist syndrome comes from. But there's this element of it doesn't have to be that way. There's this element of that's not going to be everybody's story. Although there will be some who will have detours, there will be some who will have to work other jobs, absolutely. But the starving artist for me is really more of a mindset that does not need to be there. If we are really following the plan, if we are really following the path, and doing the work that we know we're supposed to do, I really believe that the universe collaborates with you. One thing within this, how do we market ourselves? How do we find our success? How do we continue to better ourselves? Taking every course that you can and taking every opportunity as you can. Where I grew up in the Dunham space. I'm from St. Louis, so I grew up in the Dunham space. I grew up working with Ron Harms, the artistic director of the St. Louis Black Repertory. And it was there that I watched. I grew up going to the Center of Creative Arts, which is COCA, which is one of the Midwest largest performing arts centers. And it was there that I watched, not only did I watch my teachers teach, but I was also watching these artistic directors direct. I was also really engaged in how they were running businesses. So as a teenager, I was digesting. I was really digesting. How do you run business? How do you run a business? What is that like, Q? Talk to me about designing lights. Talk to me. Oh, how did you find this palette as a costume designer? How did you? Let's look at this marketing for media, so that in getting older and starting to produce and direct and choreograph more, I have been able and fortunate to design my own lights, design the costumes, design the marketing, design the media, because I was ingesting and I was taking all of this in. And then it became practical, and it became necessary for me to understand how it works because I'm doing it now. So for me, I think in taking all of these taking classes or really ingesting and taking everything in, for me has been really helpful. And also, I think I really also have to give props to this younger generation, because this younger generation of artists are saying we're not going to be starving artists. You're going to pay me my worth, or you're not going to get my product.
That's right.
And I think they have been really upfront, and they've been forthcoming in a way that I think other generations were not, because we were told that we had to be humble and that we had to accept everything that was given, whether it was the value of your worth or not. We were just told to accept it and just keep moving forward. And I think that this younger generation is very firm in their belief of, no, you're going to pay me what I deserve. So I also really do have to give props to this younger generation as well.
Yeah, so I want to say, I tell this story all the time. I think my son, Ryan Johnson, who you all know, is an artist. His company is Soul Defined, and he performed at the International Blacks in Dance. He came out the womb asking for money. Where I was saying, just tell me how much you have and I'll do it for you. I mean, that's how I lived my life for a long time. But a lot of people liked me, they used me. That's how I was able to move forward. I showed up on time. I always did what I was supposed to do. There wasn't no mess around me. I didn't create mess. I didn't, I was just always there. But he came out asking for $250 to teach a class. And here I am teaching for 50. And he's like, well, mom, that's old school. But anyway, go, come on.
I think my fellow panelists have brought up some really interesting points that I definitely agree with. I almost take issue with the article. I understand where this idea of starving artists come from, and in fact, that's never been my experience. I've never missed a meal. But I feel I like to explore the counter positive. I like to think that dancers in particular, artists generally, but dancers in particular, already, because of the way we have to achieve our art, because of the way we have to pursue it, are already marketing, are already branding ourselves. We're already trying to find creative ways to get at the thing that we love to do. There's a theorist who wrote a book, Paul Hanstead. He wrote this book about wicked students, right? And basically, he wrote this book for engineers. He wrote this book for people who teach large, masses of people. And basically what he's getting at is this idea of wicked students, is this idea of creating curricula and students that can be creative problem solvers. we do that. That's what we do. You heard this brother here just talk about learning how to do the costumes, learning how to do this. You heard Antoinette talk about learning how to do the business, learning how to do the taxes. That's innate in what we do as dancers. In other words, if somebody calls themselves an artist, they're not starving, right? Because if they can identify as an artist, they figured out how to navigate in something that is obtuse as dancing and make a living for it. So they are already savvy. The other thing I take issue with is that how many people are putting this kind of a microscope on English majors or history majors? You know what I'm saying? Like, are people asking English majors when they come out of college, are they writing books? Are they writing sonnets? Are they writing plays? You get what I'm saying, right? And yet, when it comes to the fine arts, particularly dance, when it comes to the fine arts, we have this, what are you going to do with your life? Like, Antoinette said, what are you going to do with yourself upon this? Okay, no, really, you're a dancer, really, what are you going to do? And sometimes I think that's unfair. And I love what this brother said about this this younger generation, they lack a lot of things, but saying what they want and what they're worth is not one of them. They're going to get their coins. They're going to get their $5. And they have other things to learn about how to get that $5 on a regular basis. They're minimally going to ask for that $5. And so there's a balance in between, But this idea of the starving artist, I think, is a misnomer. I think is antiquated, particularly in the advent of this kind of self-producing mechanisms, i.e. social media, that doesn't have to be anymore. That's my take on the issue.
Thank you so much, Kamal. Bashir, would you like to add anything to the conversation?
I do want to add, because that's a big thing that I have too, in terms of, a lot of times, I remember I had a mom come to me because she really wanted her daughter to, I think, go to school for like law or something, and the daughter did not want to go to school for law. She wanted to go to school for dance, and it was this big, like, are you gonna get a job? Are you gonna get a job? But then also the question is, are you gonna get a job in anything that you do? Like, people don't always initially get a job straight out of college in their field. That, I've worked in restaurants with a lot of people who went to school for pre-law or was in the medical field, and they're now serving at a restaurant because they can't currently find a job in this economy. So it's just, I've always had an issue with that as well. And starving artists, I understand that concept, but I do feel like it's not necessarily a starving artist, but I do understand having to struggle and maybe not make as much as you would like to or as you should be making. So there might be a little bit of struggle, and I think that comes with not just being an artist, but in whatever field that you're going in. There's going to be a time where it gets a little rough. And I think we all have dealt with that. I know Chris has mentioned getting a job right out of college, but sometimes you are in that transitional period, where you might leave a company and you're trying to figure out what's the next thing, what do I want to do now that I'm not performing anymore? What's the next job? And so you may find like side hustles and side jobs, but it may not be what you were making before, what you were doing before. So there's always a period where it might be a little rough, but I think that comes in whatever field that you're doing.
Thank you. So we only have one more question, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A. So while I was at Temple, I was a teaching fellow, and I remember Sarah Hilzendagger saying that she always had to explain to other people the value of dance. So in the on campus, on and off campus, meaning that people who are making policies, giving raises, making decisions, doing valuing, devaluing, the people in the space. And I've noticed during my career as a coordinator, I'm always having to justify and help other people understand the value of dance. So whether it was my dean or my chair, the provost, because they don't understand it. So my question to you is, what do we have to do, or do we have to do anything to convince other people who are making decisions about, policies and practices and money, et cetera. What do we need to do to help them understand that we're at the same level as an English instructor, a math instructor, a CEO, et cetera? What do we need to do? And I'm going to ask Bashir to start that, then Antoinette, Kamal, and then we'll end with Christopher on that. Okay?
Well, I think it comes with the work, depending on what work that you're doing. I think for New World, even, Dance for Nia, what New World tries to do, we try to really make work that is relatable for people and that they really can connect to. And so I think that's the start of it, is like allowing people to see themselves within the work, within the choreography, within the dances that's on stage. And so our mantra for New World is holding on to humanity. We really try to, I think that's the biggest thing for us, because sometimes people do look, those doctors and lawyers and the people who are giving money to the companies and these organizations look, and, a nice, 5 turns may not really mean much to them. Getting their leg up, to whack their head may not mean much to them. But what are you saying within the work? What are you saying within the 5 turns? How, what is the storyline between that? And so, sometimes, and this is not a mission for us of like having work that's going to make somebody cry, but I think our work a lot of times will touch people because it's something that they've gone through, or they say like, oh, we're going to go to church and we missed it, but we got it through this. We got our healing through this. We were going through this and this, we were going through this specific situation, and this will now start to heal our family. This will now start to heal what I was dealing with my mom or my dad or whatever. So really, I think creating work that's really purposeful and that people can really connect to, that they really want to come back and see. A lot of times also what I found within the field that I'm in is the arts and education programs are very important, because they also want to see, those who have children, like, oh, and I know we spoke about it earlier in terms of like, oh, it stops at 18, but it is most times those programs where they're wanting to give more money to the young artists, whether it's their kids just being able to get out the house and move their body and do something and be on stage and shine. It's like, yeah, I get to see my kid do this, and let me take a picture and all of this and that, and have that moment. But those arts and education programs really have been beneficial, I think, for children, for parents to see that connection between art and whatever thread line you're doing within education. And we've, working with NDI, I've kind of learned that a lot of like, oh, it's purposeful, because whatever they're learning within school, we can apply to dance as well. We can make the step based off of, we can talk about the environment based off of this dance step and connect it to this dance step, and what a creative way to do that, and allow the kid to shine and learn at the same time. So, I think just going back and really being purposeful about what you're trying to do, what you're trying to say, and allowing people to really connect and resonate with that, I think has been very beneficial with us, because they see themselves within the work.
Thank you. Kamal?
Yeah, well, particularly for those of us who work in Africanist expressions, dance should be central in our study of civilized peoples, right? It houses all the epistemologies, right? It has history, it has math, it has science, it has religion, it has language, it has discourse. Every time throughout the history of the world, when somebody wants to conquer another people, the first thing they get to is the dance. They stop them from doing their certain dance, right? If we just look at African American history from the Stoner Rebellion and on, dance is always the thing. Dance has that kind of power, right? So I think that for people who don't understand the beauty of this dance, beauty of this work art form called dance, they haven't been looking hard enough in terms of what it houses. And yet we don't have to justify putting a ball in a hoop or tackling people into their lives to get it across the goal. Like we don't ever have to justify those things. And those things make millions of dollars, but we don't ever have. I mean, people will stop their classes and church services and make sure they get on television to see this event. And yet you want to question dance, right? And so I think, I tend to be a little bit more aggressive in these kind of discourses, right? But I think you have to throw the mirror up, right, in that regard, and to prove how dance holistically gets at the person. It holistically gets at it. We're just trying to train the body in a specific way. And to express ourselves in a specific way. But isn't that what school is? Isn't that what education is inherently supposed to do? And so, I mean, that's my particular bent on justifying dance as a field of study, for people who are in the dark ages.
Thank you, Kamal. Antoinette.
Ooh, this angers me so much. I will say two things: match my grind and show me the money. You need to embody this. So you've asked a dancer, dance educator, and performer to learn how to write a grant. I'm writing 3,000, 5,000, 1,500 word papers every other week now. I have been asked to balance a balance sheet. I've been asked to debate why my company needs X amount of dollars. But yet you have not gotten on the dance floor and did a roll down, a flat back, a tendu, a plie, a combination, reverse movement, right and left, problem solve, as Kamal said, and do everything that we do on demand in order to get the little that we get. I find it very interesting when I teach professional development and everybody's, oh, this is so fun, da, da, da. But when we get to the heart of it, the brain is not there to function the way our brain is there to function. I need you to be on the one when I need you to be on the one. Not be there one and not be there on two, not come up like grandma from the floor. But when I want you to get up, get up. And that's the demand that we're under. And like Kamal said, you don't question. I mean, it's amazing to see what they're doing with basketballs. It's amazing to see what they're doing with footballs. It's amazing to see a gymnast. And actually, I just wrote a whole article of Black women reclaiming their bodies on the pole. Forget the sexual intent about the pole. What are they doing on this pole? It is amazing. The kind of athleticism, the grace and the beauty that they are doing with these poles, but it's not recognized as being downplayed because of, what it's wrapped around. But I will say this: every dean, every provost, every president, everyone who holds the pocketbooks, come and step in the studio with us. Come do what we do, learn what we do, be in our world so that you can understand that our world is just as hard, just as tedious, and just as demanding as the sciences, the technology, and whatever else. Embody it, experience it.
Thank you. And we'll end with Christopher.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this question gets to my spirit. It's so interesting because I remember going to a massage therapist recently. And this is after having done some work with Diane McIntyre on her new work, and the company manager got us all a massage therapist to relieve the body of the tension. And the massage therapist was working with a group of dancers, was working with us, and he didn't know that we were dancers, but he said, "Oh, are y'all football players? Are you athlete? Why is your body so tense? It's like working on a football player. It's like working on a wrestler." And I said, "Oh, I'm a dancer. I'm a dancer." And the amount of pressure that I put on my body, and the research shows too, the amount of pressure that we put on our body is the same as a football player, a basketball player, and sometimes even more aggressive. Um, I really believe that dance is so wrapped up, much like what Kamal said, dance is so wrapped up in the fabric of our body. It's so wrapped up in the fabric of the community. Everybody dances, and yet somehow nobody gets the value of dance except for dancers, except for artists. And I believe that as we continue to shift, we have to continue to demand the value be seen. Um, as we continue to demand um, equity within pay, equity within how dance companies are seen, and how and getting out of the oh, we'll just take this dance company, and this dance or this choreographer will get all of the work. As we continue to demand that type of equity, we also have to demand the equity of seeing dance as something that is valuable by this entire society and by the entire state. Um, and I think that as we demand that, I think people will also understand the worth. They'll understand the work. But I don't think that we'll get anywhere unless we don't demand it.
Thank you so much. This was fabulous. We'd like to now open up our virtual stage to our audience with questions. We have Kelly helping us to acknowledge anyone who raises their hand and would like to ask a question. We'll give them a second to really kind of think. You know, it's that pause. You know, I teach pieces in the pause, so I do meditation, as you know, and it's really in the pause where you find the peace, not in the inhaling and exhaling. So let's just pause for a moment from this wonderful exchange of ideas and thoughts about creating value for ourselves and for our products. Um, are there any questions? Can they unmute themselves, Kelly?
After they raise their hand, I can allow them to unmute themselves.
Okay,
So I think Professor Camille, you can unmute.
All right, thank you so much. This was an amazing, very enlightening panel. Hey y'all, hey, some of y'all I was with this weekend at CAD, so definitely good to see you all again. Hey, hey, hey. I would love it if you could, because I have a lot of my students on today who are listening in, and a lot of the things that I have said in various courses throughout the fall and the spring semester has been said here. So it's good to be able to have that circle back and be instated in different voices, but definitely echoed amongst the dance community. I'm wondering if you could really have the conversation about grit, drive, and determination. One of the things I noticed with our younger generation, they tend to, and no shade, students, but y'all tend to not see it. In terms of the level of commitment that it takes to really push through and persevere for whatever the goals and dreams are that you have within your career. I wonder if you can all just touch on that journey of really developing and building that muscle of having the drive and determination, despite whatever issues may have come on your dance journey. If y'all can talk about that a little bit.
So let me begin. We'll do Christopher and Antoinette, Kamal, and we'll end with Bashir. Christopher.
Yeah, grit, drive, and determination. I did it. I did it. I danced because I have to. Because the ancestors inside of me are speaking so loudly in my ear that I don't have a choice but to do it. But it doesn't mean that it was easy. It was not easy. Growing up, like I was kind of a chunky. I was a chunky kid. I was a chunky kid. There were people in the studio that, of course, had feet and legs and turnout and rotation. And although I had the drive, I had to work at the turnout. I had to work at the rotation. I had to work at releasing my hamstring. I had to work at releasing the top of my ankle. And those are the exercises. Like my some of my teachers were on me. And I appreciate them so much because it developed this discipline. And I think releasing um, releasing my ego so that I could get the information that the teacher was trying to give me, and so that I could absorb it and take it in. Um, did I release my ego all of the time? No, absolutely. I'm human. But knowing that in order to move to the level that I was aspiring to be, I had to put in the work. I had to work through the no's. I had to get on the horse when I fell. I had to like when I fell, I had to get up and get back on the horse and try it again. And I was really blessed to have those mentors and teachers that said, do it again. No, do it again. And we're going to be on this step for the next 10 minutes until you do it. You make progress. That's better, right? You extended your leg a little longer. That's great. Now go even further. Now don't stop. Now don't settle. Now keep going. And I think that in doing that, it sparked something inside of me that said that I needed to keep doing this. I needed to prove to myself and to my community that I could. Um, and and I don't know if I don't, we talk about this all the time. Thank you so much for your question too, because like as educators, we talk about this a lot with this generation too. It's like how do we get them to that hunger? And not that they don't have the hunger, but I don't know if we see it the way we saw it in ourselves because we were in our bodies. So like we knew what we had, right? How do we get that to them? And I think it's by inspiring them. Like you have to be on them. Like you have to continue to pass that torch, that mantle of keep going, go deeper, go harder, go stronger, keep going. That was better. That was better. You have more. Keep going. That's it. You're on the right track. Like I think as educators, we have to continue to do that get and not get tired by what we see. Because I'm sure that some of my teachers felt the same way that we feel now.
Okay, we're going to move
Yeah,
on to that. So that was an honest account
yeah.
that you caused problems for your educators as well.
I'm sure I did. I'm sure I did.
And the one thing you said that helped me too is because I was probably the least likely person to dance because I had no flexibility. I don't have long legs and short torso. I have a hyperextended back. I have all those things. But I always say I wanted to be a dancer. I became a dancer, but I worked at it. So every time I fell on point, my mom would say, as you said, get back up on the horse. And I remember that even to this day. Kamal.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I think that, and to be quite honest with you, as an educator, this is my greatest concern with this generation of students. This kind of drive and grit, and it concerns me because in my not just in dance, just generally speaking, but I'll use dance as a way to get into it. And I always tell my students that your opportunities in dance are rarely handed to you like this. Rarely. You have to be prepared and get it, right? My first solo I've ever did was my first year in Kariyama and Company. I got as a my first year in the company because somebody was sick and I knew the part. And my teacher was like, you will do it or we won't do the piece. And I use that as an example because I think that this generation, although they're really in tune with their needs, I don't think they see that other piece of it. That sometimes you got to push yourself beyond your comfortability, not for something in the foreseeable future, but for something that you don't see coming, right? And in that case, you have to trust the wisdom of your elders, the wisdom of your instructors. They're pushing you for a reason. There's a reason why your elders are working so hard, because they see something in you. And sometimes you don't see it coming. You just have to trust that that's happening. And so this idea of drive and grit, I mean, I don't know what to do about it, because I really struggle with it with my current students. But I think that the time, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and if you're doing what you're called to do, you find the grit, right? You find it. Like this brother was saying, you staying on it. You'll take the, okay, do it again, because you want better for yourself. I'm not sure how to get that from these younger students. I just keep telling them what's possible. And I keep speaking to the truth, or I keep speaking to what I see, their potential, where I see them going. And hopefully that gives some kind of inspiration. And hopefully that gives them some kind of incentive to go the extra mile.
Thank you. Antoinette.
One, I want to start off by saying, the young people, I want you to trust in process and not product. Dance will never be a product driven occupation. It is always a process. Then I will lead by saying, and I agree with Christopher, watching Debbie Allen on Fame and The Wiz was my trajectory. I'm going to do that one day. Then I go to an organization, Freedom, the Real Freedom Theater, where our mantra was, I respect myself and the ABCs of life. Always be confident and be the change you wish to see in the world. By our ancestors and our elders, we have been mandated to do this, and to do it with excellence and with pride. And you build a thick skin, so when you get into those hard times, go ahead and cry. It's okay. Go ahead and stomp it out on the dance floor. It's okay. Journal it out, choreograph it out, do whatever you got to do to get that out so that you can live to dance another day. Those small defeats will get you to the process of a greater triumph. And you got to build community. Even in my PhD studies, it's first time in Texas women's history, I believe, it's 5 Black women in a cohort. We stand like a soldier. Like, Beyonce, get information, we get information. And when one of us fall, the other ones, we there, come on, girl, you got this, pick it up. You don't understand what the professor said? Here, let me explain it to you. You got to build community, and you got to trust us. None of us are here to hurt you. All of the institutions, they hire people with an initial impetus to care. And we care about you because you care about what we care about, which is dance. You have to trust we're going to take you to that finished goal, or help you build a road to that finished goal. And all the names we just dropped today, all of us can literally pick up the phone and say, hey, my baby coming to Cleo, look out for her. Or my baby coming, Kamal, look out for my baby. Or Vanessa, I think I want to send somebody your way. Just because you don't see it, and I told this to one of my babies, just because you don't see it happening, you don't know that the works is working behind the scene.
Exactly.
You got to trust that we have your interest at heart. And all of us get on our hind haunches. At 17, I just knew I had it. Things was coming. And Faye just shook there, and she just looked at me. She said, I'm going to let you fall so that you can feel it. And then I'm going to pick you back up. But it's okay to fall. Y'all don't want to fall. Y'all have a fear of falling. Please fall. As Faye would say, you halfway at the ground, you hanging upside down, you fall, where you gonna go? You're already halfway there. Fall, pick yourself back up, dust it off, and get to the next level. And I will say this to you. My niece said to me, she had an assignment to go to see a live play. She didn't want to pay the ticket for the play. She literally said to me, well, I'm paying money for Usher. Is Usher going to get you a degree? So you're going to pay goo gobs of money to go see Usher, but you won't go see a live play that could possibly enhance and change your life. I love Usher. I'm about to get on my roller skates because of Usher. But have that experience that can open doors for you. If you can figure out how to get the money for Beyonce and Usher, figure out how you can get on that dance floor. Figure out a work study. Figure out a summer program so that you can go to the next height.
Thank you. And Bashir, we'll end with you.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, honestly, dance is hard. And there's been plenty of days, even as a male. You know, they always say it's easy for males, but I don't think it was easy for me. Like, I done got cussed out. I remember getting cussed out so bad at Danko when I was in the second company with, by down. I didn't, I remember crying there. I remember DCDC crying, being on the floor, being told, being in the company, but told like, oh, you can't dance. And I'm like, well, why am I here? And crying on the floor. I remember crying at Cleo's and not for, because just for like, and Chris will tell you, like, there's been plenty of, I'm sensitive and I cried, but at the same time, I'm from Baltimore. And I knew there was still like a push through that I had, especially growing up doing karate with my dad, having a certain ethic. I remember Miss Vanessa cut me out of she took me out of a piece because I was late, so it's just certain, it was just certain things that, sometimes you have to like work through. And especially if you really want to do it. If you really want to dance, it's not going to come easy. If you want to sing, it's not going to come easy. Whatever you want to do, you really have to work for it. And I think when you have those teachers who see you, and I will say, I'm one of those. It's really true. Like, if the teacher stops giving you corrections, if they really stop being on top of you, then you really have an issue. Because there's moments when I'm in class and I'm teaching, and a certain energy that I may get now as a teacher being in that role, then I'm like, oh, well, let me go to this student, because they're not receiving what I'm giving them. And I'm not going to kill myself trying to help them, and they're not trying to receive what I'm trying to give them. So definitely, if a teacher's on you, really taking everything that they're saying. Because now what I got, those moments that I cried at Denko, those moments that I cried at Cleo's and DCDC, I'm using those, all of those things that were told to me, I'm using for my students in a different way a little bit, because we're now in a new generation, we're now in a new time. So I'm still loud, I'm still extra, I'm still all of that, but then I know how to soften it. I know how to kind of balance both of it. Like, this was great. I love how you extended this arm as you threaded through, but now apply this. Try it again. I mean, you still have to work on it. You still have to let them know, like, do it again. Do it the second time so I know you really have it. Do it the third time so it's really ingrained. Now go over there and keep working on it. Like, oh, I don't see you working. Why are you just standing over there kikiing? It's just certain things that, like, you have to know as an artist, like, the teacher is going to embed in you, and then there's certain things that you just kind of have to know, like, I got to do this on my own if they're not going to say anything. And every correction, even if it's not for you, take it in. Right. I really learned that when I was in school, like, oh, what's that note that they're giving? Oh, let me try to apply that. Oh, they just told them to turn their leg out more. Oh, let me do that. Unless they come in, unless the teacher comes to you and says, like, oh, that's not for you, that's for them. So just really taking everything that's being told.
So I'm going to end the conversation. One of the things I used to tell when I was in the studio is never worry about when I'm giving you corrections, because that means I really care about you. You need to worry when I stop. Because when I stop, I am through and it is over. It means that either your attitude needs to be in point, or you're not listening, or you do not value me as your professor. So it's always when I stop talking is the problem. As long as I'm talking, I care about you, want better things for you. So I'm sorry we have to leave now. This was a great conversation. I think it's the beginning of, this is part one. I think we need to have a part two. I want to say thank you to Antoinette. Love you, my dear. Thank you so very much for all the work that you did here at Coppin and helped me when I first came. Kamal, my roommate from Temple, love you so much. I thank you, thank you. We have some stories to tell, but we won't tell anybody. And then Bashir and Christopher. Christopher, even though I met you through Bashir, I remember spending time with Bashir and his family, his mom and his dad, and being invited into his home. So I say thank you. And I thank all of you for coming into my home, into Coppin State University, for our Black History Month presentation of the undeniable impact of the arts. a conversation with creative educators and entrepreneurs. I thank you so much. Peace and blessings. Enjoy your weekend. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Thank
This concludes
you.
the program. Thank you all. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you, ma'am.